Hey guys, if you have ever heard the term more money, more problems, I'm going to challenge that today. And I'm also going to give you an insight into my Airbnb business, what we're doing behind the scenes to be more efficient, more effective, and continue to keep up with this crazy growth that we're seeing. We're talking about it right here on the Fearless Investor Podcast. Hey, all, welcome to the Fearless Investor Podcast. You're listening to me, Kyle Stanley, and we're talking about my favorite subject today, which is Airbnb. Before we get too deep into this, I want to point you to a couple of different things that we have going on. If you have not already, make sure to download our Airbnb profit calculator. It's right there on our website, fearlesskyle.com. You just fill out the form on the homepage there, and you get the profit calculator sent straight to you. It's going to show you whether or not you have an Airbnb deal or Airbnb dud. It shows you how to analyze the deal. And it really just shows you what your bottom line is going to be if you're analyzing the deal correctly. That's the very important thing that most people just cannot figure out. How do I analyze an Airbnb deal? Well, another resource that we have that can help you out is our free Facebook page. You can connect with me anytime on there, and you can also connect with other Airbnb people who are either professionals or trying to become professionals, and that's just Airbnb Mastermind. So if you just Google search Facebook Airbnb Masterminds, you're going to find our group, and you can go ahead and just add yourself. I'll approve you, and you can ask any questions anytime and connect with me as well. So let's talk today about one of these things. And I started, if you're keeping up with our business, there's a lot of things going on that are really good, and also at the same time, like really brand new for me. So we had, I talked about it, I want to say about a week ago, where it was just like in the span of 3 months, we went from 10 or 11 Airbnbs to like now we're at 21 or 22. Crazy how quickly that happened. But that's also like those 7 of those 11 are actually coming live in the next 2 weeks. So that's a lot of moving parts. That's a lot of things that we have to manage. And for that reason, I'm starting to see that my problems are not more money, more problems. It's more money, more challenges that are different. Okay. And I don't like calling them problems, because a problem to me is an issue that you run across that is negative. And I'm not necessarily dealing with negative things. I'm dealing with new things, and I call those challenges. So it's not more money, more problems. It's more money, new challenges, different problems, I guess you could say. So, I kind of want to start it off with just saying, what were some of my old problems? For those of you that are in Airbnb or looking to get into Airbnb, when you had 1 or 2 properties, maybe even under 5, like these were some common things. How do we grow? How do we keep on adding more? Did I talk to all my cleaners today? Did they all do their job? Did I respond to all of my guests? That's really important, to respond to guests in a timely manner. And when you've got less than 5 properties, you're probably one of the only ones that's actually responding, because you haven't earned enough money yet to hire other people. Am I priced correctly? I'm new to this. I don't know if I'm pricing enough. Am I pricing too high? Is my occupancy too low? Is my occupancy too high? It's figuring out that formula of what works for you and how you can actually maximize your profits. And if there's a guest issue, can I handle it right away? Is this something that I can do? I remember when I first started in Airbnb, I had guests that were like, hey, it's really warm in here, and we don't have like any way to turn down the AC any further. It doesn't seem to be working. And so I would like literally hand deliver room fans to people, and just to get them through the night. Not something I do anymore. Right. So these were all problems that I used to have. Now the problems or the challenges, like we talked about, these are the new ones for me. How do I find more cleaners? How do we stay booked with a growing business? Continuing to add and add and add. One would think, hey, the more that you add, the tougher it is to stay booked. If you were 100% booked before, now that you have 20 properties, maybe you're 80% booked. Well, how do we knock that mindset of losing occupancy with new ones, and how do we keep everything 100% occupied or close to it? Do we have enough staff to handle all of our problems that come our way, from cleaners to interior designers to repairmen to subcontractors? Do we have enough of those people that if a problem arises, we're going to be able to handle it in a timely manner? What else? New problems, new challenges. Do we have enough people for quality checks over 20 places? Like, it used to be, hey, you go and you check on a place every once in a while, or teach your staff, teach your cleaners how to go check on it. Well, now these cleaners that are going and cleaning maybe 3 or 4 different properties, their main thing is to clean. We don't want to have our cleaners continuously trying to do quality checks when they have so many different places to go to. Some of them have 2, 3, 4 turnovers in one day sometimes. So how do we keep them laser focused? Well, we have to go and we have to bring other people in to do quality checks. And so for that reason, it's like, man, 20 of those properties, how do we make sure everything's operating correctly? And, full transparency, we dealt with something really unusual this last week. We had a guest that was staying with us for 4 months. And, this is during a hot season in Fresno. No complaints from that guest. It was a very typical cleaning that we had to do for the turnover. And that night, someone else checked in after we cleaned everything. And they were like, hey, AC isn't working. And I was like, you're crazy. We just had someone there for 4 months. Of course it's working. It's got to be user error. And it turns out that literally during that turnover, the AC froze. It was low on Freon, and this guest left. So we had, of course, it's things like that you just sometimes are not going to be able to control. And that goes back to my motto of, if it's in your control, you can worry about it. But if it's out of your control, it's not worth your energy. So this was one of those things that was like, man, that's a bummer. That was someone that was going to stay there for 7 days. 9 days. And they were paying like almost $1,200, and they canceled after night one. Luckily, we got everything filled up again, but we had the same AC thing pop up. Even though we sent someone to go fix it, same thing popped up. And so we started to realize, well, shoot, this might end up being something that we have to replace. Long story short, we didn't have to replace it. It had a leak. We got it fixed today. But it's just one of those things that's like, man, I look at that and I'm like, how do we avoid that for the future? And honestly, when it comes down to it, we can't expect staff on every turnover to go check everything in the house. Sometimes we have to learn these things the hard way, and we have to take a little bit of a financial hit. Luckily for me, because we book up so quickly, I really didn't lose out on a whole lot, aside from just paying my AC guy to go and fix it. So it's these quality checks that there's only so much that's in your control, I guess is what I'm saying here. And then another one is, how do we make sure things don't fall through the cracks? How do we make sure that every single bed is made correctly? How do we make sure that our cleaners are actually showing up on time? How do we make sure that, they're up to par on what we're expecting? How do we make sure that every guest that comes in is going to have the same experience, is not going to have to hound us for, hey, how do I get into the place? Or, hey, where's the Keurig and all this stuff? We need to make sure that these things aren't falling through the cracks, because things fall through the cracks. One of two things happen. It takes a lot of time for us to fix those things, or the guest has a bad experience, or both. So, how, I guess, with these new issues, new challenges, we're always looking to ask, like, how can we get better? And so one thing that I get asked a lot is, hey, how do you stay operating at such a high level with all these Airbnbs? I mean, I've got a buddy of mine who makes like over $1 million a year flipping houses. He's a guy that literally like has systems after systems of things, and he just can't wrap his mind around, how do you get the turnover on Airbnb? And that's just for one Airbnb. And he's thinking to himself, like, between 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. on almost a daily basis, sometimes you've got to make sure that that turnover is tight. And so I started thinking about that, and I want to share this with you, because this is kind of some of the things that are in the background behind the scenes in our business that allow us to operate at a high level, allow me to reduce stress, and really just have a well-oiled machine is what it's kind of all about. So I'm going to just go through some of these things. So again, we're growing at a 50% mark. We're adding 7 Airbnbs to make it right around 21 or 22 here in the next 2 weeks. That means, first of all, from operating at a high standpoint, we're operating at a high standpoint in getting new clients. A lot of these are just managing Airbnbs. We don't own them. We don't have any financial responsibility to them. We just literally have people coming to us and saying, hey, how much can I make with a regular rental here? And how much can I make with an Airbnb rental here? And we give them the choices, and they usually come to us and say, let's do Airbnb. So for us to be able to get new clients like this at such a high rate, we're doing something right. We're getting people results. We're making people money. And so that is, at the end of the day, what is going to help us to continue to grow. So from a marketing standpoint, we're just really doing a good job of getting our people results. That's how we're operating at a high standpoint when it comes to marketing, because that's all word of mouth. That's pretty amazing for us to be able to grow that quickly with word of mouth. Again, I'm asking myself at least once a week, how can we get better? How can we operate at a higher level? How can we not just maximize profits? Not always about that. It is about that, but it's not always about that. It's sometimes about, how do we keep everyone happy? How do we make sure everyone's doing their job? How do we make sure that we're going to have them around for a long time? Those are all questions I'm asking myself on a weekly basis, so that I'm not getting caught with my thumb up my butt. That's really just what it comes down to. Next, we automate as much as humanly possible. For example, Smart DNA, not only great for communication. Anytime a guest is going to try to inquire about our place, they're going to get sent an automated message saying, hey, before we even answer, here's our house rules. If it's your first time, why are you booking here? And we have all this, literally, depending upon what the guest says, sometimes even with what I love about Smart B&B is, if you have the guest say like early check-in, we have an automated message that says, hey, it looks like you're trying to get an early check-in. Here's the process for that. So we try to automate as much as possible, so that literally the only thing we're really responding to is the things that we feel are necessary to respond to, or don't have an automated message attached to it, which really cuts our communication down somewhere in the neighborhood of probably like 75, 80%. So the other part, though, that I love is AirDNA allows you to, Smart B&B. I think I said Smart DNA in the beginning. These acronyms sometimes are tough for me to hold on to. All right, so I'm talking about Smart B&B, not Smart DNA or AirDNA. Smart B&B allows us to do the automated messaging, but it also allows us to be able to talk to our cleaners without actually talking to our cleaners. So every time a cleaner goes and cleans, they're getting 3 messages reminding them to clean, and then they're getting messages afterward reminding them of what they have to do after they clean to make sure they're following our process. So that's what I love about Smart B&B, is that it gives me that opportunity to not have to feel like, hey, checklist, did I talk to all my cleaners today? Or my assistant having to talk to all of the cleaners today. It makes things a lot easier from that standpoint, for sure. Surround myself with the best staff possible. Again, that goes from assistants to repairmen to subcontractors to cleaners to, my CPA, to like literally everyone. It is so important to have such a good team, because what that allows me to do is it allows me to rest easy at night knowing like, hey, I don't have to stay on top of you. I'm paying you well enough. I'm treating you like family, or treating you like a teammate, not necessarily treating you like an employee. I'm not yelling and screaming and getting in your face. I'm saying, hey, listen, here's what happened, and here's what we need to do to get better, or how do you think we can get better? I want to have that kind of communication with my team to make them feel like they're a part of the decision, rather than they're just, bowing down to the boss. And so I think that is, like, at the end of the day, it's the reason I'm going to Arizona in a month, for a month. And like, for me, that gives me such peace to know that, hey, I can leave for a month and not have to worry about going to these places. In fact, for the first time ever, we had an Airbnb that I never even saw in person. I trusted my assistant so much to say, hey, go check it out. Is it Airbnb worthy? If it is, let's get it going. And so all I did was I talked to the owner, got the contract signed, and it took me a month to actually step foot in that Airbnb. And I didn't even have to. I just was curious. I wanted to see what it looked like. So that's how awesome your team can be for you. But let's talk about the other side of that, how bad your team can be for you. Bad cleaners, bad assistants or managers who are communicating to your guests that don't know how to communicate, that don't understand the importance of communication, that just assume too much. Repairmen who say they're going to be there, but then they don't show up. Interior designers that you give a budget to and they don't follow the budget. Or they do follow the budget and they don't tell you how much they sacrificed on quality to where they got beds that really are not going to make it through a month. These are all things that can really destroy your business and destroy your excitement about this business. That's, I think, I mean, I've heard so many people who have not been students of mine that have been given the opportunity to be, but then come back to me a month later and say, oh, Airbnb just wasn't for me. It was too much stress. And at that point, I kind of asked them, like, what's going on that you're too stressed out about this? Like, how is it that I feel like this is the best business in the world and you feel like it's the most stressful business in the world? Something's different there. And I'm willing to bet it's because either you don't know how to systematize things or you don't have really good teammates. So that's the big thing right there, is operating at a high level. I can't put more emphasis on having great teammates. And then, we're open to guest feedback. That's another one. When a guest messages us and says, hey, this could have been better, this could have been better, this could have been better, I always ask myself, is this a guest that's just high maintenance, or is this something that if I was a guest, I would want as well? So I'm trying to think of maybe some examples. So we have futons at every single one of our places. I love the futons. I've slept on them before. I find them very comfortable. And we had a guest recently who said, hey, the futon was a little bit hard. One of probably at this one, I think we've had 70 reviews on this place so far. First time we've ever had that come up. Hey, this is too hard. So what do? We check it. I ask my assistant, hey, you check on that. I ask the cleaners, you check on that. Can you see, is it too hard? So we're going to actually take a look and get some feedback here from not just the guests, but also from our own standpoint. And then we're going to weigh the cost and the benefit. Hey, listen, we had one complaint over 70 reviews. Is it worth it for that one complaint to go over and buy a completely new futon that works just fine right now? Probably not. But if that guest says, hey, listen, we love the place. However, it would have been nice to have a couple more blankets or sheets laid out. Yeah, we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna say, hey, listen, are we putting out enough stuff? All I'm saying is we actually very consciously look at all this feedback that these guests are giving us, and actually do an analysis of like, hey, is this legitimate? Should we actually do this? It's not just kind of like, oh, that guest was high maintenance, although we do get a lot of those that are, you can tell when it's just a high maintenance guest and that you're just not going to give it a second thought. But a lot of these things, when it comes to comfort, when it comes to all the things that, you want for a stay, we're going to look at those things. So I think that's an important part as well. It's why we have a 4.9 star rating over 600 reviews, because we listen to what our guests say. And then the biggest thing is all hands on deck from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. I know that once 11 a.m. hits, we have turnovers happening. That means that I'm probably, if there's any issues, going to get a message from either my assistant or actually, that's the only person that will come from, because my assistant stops all communication right at my doorstep, meaning a cleaner should not be contacting me. She should be contacting my assistant. A repairman should not be contacting me with what was wrong. He or she should be contacting my assistant. And so basically what that means is if I get a message from my assistant between the hours of 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., it usually means, hey, she's keeping me updated with things. Hey, listen, there was a bad turnover. One of the guests left the place a mess. I'm going to send you pictures just so you can see it. And then she's got the claim taken care of. She's sending a request to the guest for the money that it's going to cost us to do the extra cleaning. Or, hey, one of the cleaners got caught up. And so I'm working on finding another cleaner to go send over there. And all those cleaners know, hey, even though you're not booked for that day, stuff happens. You might get a call from us. And so those are the things that, and that goes back to having really great teammates too. Like with this AC issue the other day, I mean, we're talking about 2 days before Labor Day. So very easily we could have contacted one of our repairmen and said, hey, can you go check it out? And he probably could have said, you know what? No, it's Labor Day weekend. I'm going to take some time. We have repairmen and we have multiple repairmen for this reason. The first one said that, hey, I'm out of town with family. Great. Second one said, no, I'm in town. Absolutely. I'll go check that out. So knowing that they understand too, that, hey, listen, we're setting an expectation with our guests that they're going to get things taken care of almost as well as a hotel, because, we don't have 24-hour service per se. But that's the things that are going to make you a lot different. And this guest that had the AC issues, one thing that he said in his review is, we did our absolute best to try to fix the situation. It just happened to be a really unfortunate timing. So at the end of the day, as long as the guests know that we are doing our absolute best with the best teammates that we have, that's all they really want. Some of them are going to be high maintenance and say, and ask for the moon, but most of them are going to be reasonable people. So with all that being said, those are kind of the things that we're doing to operate at a high level. And then, of course, lastly, there's things that we're trying to change. I want to give you a real clean insight on what we're doing right now in our business to adapt, to change, to get better. And one of those things is we're getting a VA. We're going to start having a virtual assistant that's going to be able to take a chunk of time away from my assistant from messaging guests on a daily basis. My assistant has so many different things now that she's doing, from expenses to managing the cleaners, to managing repairmen, to managing schedules, that it's very obvious that, hey, when we get to this certain point of a certain amount of listings, it's not fair for me to say, hey, you can take on 20 listings just like you can take on 10 listings. It's just not possible. So now we're bringing in extra people. And it's a very cost-effective way to be able to do it, where we're going to assign them to a certain part of the day. You are in charge of responding to guests during these certain hours. And then when we get even bigger and bigger, eventually my assistant won't even be in charge of that. It'll be only VAs. When we get to 40 listings, VAs will be the only ones that are going to be responding to guests, and smart B&B as well. But those are the things that we're working on right now to adjust and to adapt. Doing longer term stays has been really big for us too, because we used to have, with 5 or 6 Airbnbs, sometimes 4 or 5 turnovers. And that was because we were doing a lot of one night stays. Now with 20, our goal is to get at least a week-long stay from most of these, and then fill in the gaps. If someone stays from the 1st to the 7th, and then there's another one that books from like the 10th to the 17th. Well, there's that little 3-day gap from the 7th to the 10th that we're going to fill in with 1, 2, or 3-day stays. But most of the time we want to try to get those longer term stays, so that we only still have 4 or 5 turnovers a day on a bad day, with 20 properties, versus when we had only 5 or 6 listings with 4 or 5 turnovers. So that's definitely been helping out a lot. And, we sacrifice a little bit because we make a little bit on the cleaning fees, but it's worth it to know that, hey, we can increase maybe our prices on our nightly rate rather than having to worry about losing money on a cleaning fee. So that's the big thing there. As we get bigger, we just don't care about, making a little bit of money on the cleaning fee nearly as much. We're adding more cleaners, always looking for more cleaners, adding more people who can help with deliveries and quality checks. That's definitely been a big thing for us, so that we can have more, really just boots on the ground is what we're looking for there. And then automating and detailing as much communication as possible, especially with this new project that we have. We have a triplex, and there's some shared areas with laundry. We have to really go above and beyond with this communication of, in the unit, having signs that say, hey, no entry if you're in unit B, this is the house to unit A, or, this is a shared unit, make sure that you are courteous of other people. And knowing, like, the front of this house, the front of this triplex, on the left-hand side is the main house, but then in the back is unit B. So on the side gate, we got to have, unit B parking here, unit B entrance here. And we have to do all these things along with having great check-in instructions, so that we're not, sometimes people check in at 11 p.m. at night. We're not open for business at 11 p.m. at night. We don't want people not knowing where to go or not knowing how to check in, because we just assume that they know where unit B is or unit C is versus unit A. We don't want people knocking on the door on unit A who are a family that are trying to get some sleep, versus this, couple that's getting in at 11 p.m. at night. We don't want those things to happen. So we have to be so detailed and so automated in our check-in instructions and our communication, so that we don't have these issues that can arise. So with all this being said, I'm sharing all this not to overwhelm you, but to make you realize that if you want an Airbnb business and you love systems, you're going to love Airbnb. If you aren't good with systems, if you aren't good with these types of things, you're going to want to look at, how can I outsource this stuff? I love systems, so I love taking that on. If I'm not good at systems, I'm looking to how can I automate that? How can I outsource that so that these systems do get built out that maybe I'm not really good at? And so that's where I'm really going to encourage you. If you need help, if you need a mentor, if you need a coach, make sure you reach out to me. Couple different ways that you can do that. You can go to fearlesskyle.com/Airbnb host. We have a page that literally shows you step by step how to get started in Airbnb. And at the bottom, there's an application that allows you to be able to apply to my Airbnb Kickstart Mastermind group, which I'm teaching on a weekly basis, new strategies, new ways to be able to start, automate, and scale an Airbnb business. Or if you want to, just go ahead and reach out on Instagram at Fearless Kyle, and I'm going to be able to have a one-on-one conversation with you to where we can just go ahead and take it from there to the phone and talk about, exactly what your goals are and how I can help. So make sure you're doing all those things along with joining the Facebook group, like I mentioned in the beginning, Airbnb Masterminds, and also just going ahead and downloading that Airbnb profit calculator on the homepage of fearlesskyle.com. So I hope this was all very helpful. Again, guys, more money does not equal more problems. More money equals different problems with different challenges. And that means that you just have to have a different mindset. So hopefully this was helpful today. Hopefully this helped you to be able to conquer the world of investing, especially when it comes to Airbnb. We'll see you next time.